Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hope everyone got some sleep last night. This is Cosplay on a Budget. My name's Ken. I run a burlesque troupe here, the Ken Doll Burlesque Show that was here last night. And we do a lot of repurposing, which is hence why I'm here. So, we're going to start with probably opening up with a couple of questions, and then I'll go into a couple of different techniques and different things that I use repurposing-wise to create different outfits. So, does anyone have a question real quick we start with? Nope? All right, that makes it easy. Okay, so with cosplay, Goodwill's your best friend. Goodwill and thrift shops are your best friends. Also, a little technique I learned last year while I was doing something for Anime Matsuri was recycling aluminum cans. And if you want to create armor, like a metallic armor that has a sheen to it, if you cut up aluminum cans and use the back side of them, they're really easy to paint. So, and you get a really good square out of it. So when you build, I created Paladin armor and cut out a whole bunch of, I think I used a total of like 45 cans. We drank a lot of soda that weekend. And we cut up the cans, took the tops off and just used the centerpieces, and we created some really nice armor. Normally, I would have a whole bunch of my props and my outfits with me, but we're all from Houston and all of our stuff got ruined, so we weren't able to bring any of our stuff out. But if you look up Ken's Cosplay, you'll see a few things on there, and I do videos every once in a while on YouTube to kind of help out. When I did my Jack Frost with my staff, a lot of you already know hot glue is like our best friend. It's really good for texturing. But yeah, the biggest thing that I like to do is me and my friends will all go spend a day and we'll bounce around from thrift shop to thrift shop. And as long as you have an imagination, you can turn anything into anything. That's the great thing about it. Everything from a pair of blue jeans that we cut up to create a vest out of jeans, which didn't work out too well, but it worked to an extent. But yeah, we enjoy going. My biggest suggestion when it comes to trying to create a cheap cosplay is don't be afraid of it being cheap, actually, because you know, there are these really awesome cosplayers and really awesome people that spend a lot of money on cosplays, and they're really awesome. Some of the armor out there, the EVA foam with armor, is phenomenal. It costs an arm and a leg, and you know, who needs a right arm and a left leg? But it works out really well. It takes practice. Sewing becomes your best friend, because if you can sew it yourself, then you'll save a lot of money than having someone else sew it. So I suggest, I'm not a big fan of patterns. I'm not very good with patterns, actually. I don't know why. I like to do a lot of things freehand, but practice, practice, practice. The first 10 vests that I made did not work. They were either too small, too big, didn't want to close right, sat weird on my shoulders. But that's the cool thing about doing it as cheap as I do. What I also like to do is go with like a plain t-shirt, cut it up, get a t-shirt for 75 cents from a thrift shop, and cut it up and make a pattern out of it that you want to create, and make a template for what you're going to do. That way you're not spending money on fabric, you're not spending money on any kind of excess until you're ready to do it. Even if you are a skilled seamstress or seamster, there is, the first time around never works, unless you're just like a master, and I'm not. So I'm gonna suggest trying to do it as, before you wanna spend any money on your cosplays, try to grab something super cheap and redo it. It's not gonna have the same thickness or the same kind of look of what you want, at the end, but what it will do is it gets you into a good pattern and good process to get a solid cosplay done. I had one that I used last night. It was my Bond from Seven Deadly Sins, and as you know, it's a very bright red leather, and that leather is hard to come by very often unless you just want to buy the outfit itself, which I've done that as well. I use that for actually my day-to-day, but when I do burlesque, it's really hard to have certain cosplay outfits that are easy to take off. I mean, some of you already know that, like, some of your outfits, it takes an hour or so to just put on, let alone take off. So I like to have what I call it is my solid outfit, and then my prep outfit. And my prep outfit is going to be the cheapest one I do. Like for my Bond, I got a brown leather jacket that was a long coat, and I ended up cutting it in half to create a half waist jacket, and then I took out all the panels and re-sewed them together. That's why when I say that sewing is your best friend, even if you find a really awesome jacket or a really awesome part of your cosplay, you're generally going to have to alter it. But don't be afraid of sewing. You can mess up. That's the great thing about it. You mess up and you get a little seam ripper and you just start all over. So yeah, one of my big things is to find something that I think is going to look okay and attempt to paint it, attempt to, repurpose any kind of fabric that I come across. With the Bond, something that I learned a couple of years back was not to use latex paint on leather, because it does not stick. You always want to use an oil base whenever you're trying to paint on fabric, whether it's leather or even just regular fabric. Latex binds itself together and comes off in plates, basically. So it's not a very good way to go. It is a little bit more expensive to go to oil base, but you'll be thankful for it after your first convention, because after your first convention, it's over. Yeah, if you use latex, it's gonna peel off and it's not gonna pack up right. So I always suggest using oil-based paint whenever you wanna paint. And with leather, you can find a lot of good leather at thrift shops. And it's not going to look exactly what you need it to look like, but it's gonna be able to. The great thing about leather is that it's so sturdy that you can cut it up and you can repurpose it really easy. I've bought in fur jackets there and completely just taken out all the fur and used that for my Cruella de Vil. So I had like puppies all over me. But and that was just from like one of those giant, tall fur coats that I got for like $6. So, and it turned out pretty well. But yeah, basically thrift shops, Goodwill are your best friend. Also, try to find recycling material. Plastic bottles, if you have 2 little razor blades and you put them on some washers, you can create a thing to create rope out of plastic. I had the device and I would have brought it, but it's 2 little razor blades that have some washers and nails and a board, and you have them right next to each other. You put a plastic bottle on it and you start spinning it. And what that does is it creates really thin strips. Those thin strips are actually really durable. They're almost stronger than string most of the time. So if you're trying to create either a lace in a corset or you're trying to create some sort of ties on your pants, I like to use plastic because it doesn't wear as much as cloth does. So plastic bottles are your best friend. I have a problem with empty containers at my house. I have just boxes and boxes of bottles and aluminum cans and plain boxes. Don't know why. I like to collect it, even though I don't use it as often. But I've gone everywhere from one of my very first ones that I did, armor-wise. I did Evangelion, and when we were creating the core set for the bodysuits, what we ended up doing was using cardboard. actually to start it, because what that does is it allows you to bend and stay in a form, and then what you do is you wrap that into your fabric. So I don't know if anyone's tried to make a corset, but they're very difficult if you want to try to add in bones and all that kind of stuff, which is why I started using cardboard. The cardboard actually held together pretty well for what it was. It lasted for about 3 or 4 cons. But if you create a template out of cardboard, it's really easy to glue a fabric onto it, whether you use super glue or you use some sort of hot glue and then heat it all up so it gets really flat. But those are some real basic tips that I have. Like I said, it's a lot easier when I have a whole bunch of my props and stuff to show you, because we've made a sword art online gun that we had created out of PVC pipe and cardboard, and it looks really solid. You wouldn't have guessed that it is, because if you have the right kind of paint and you make your design look right, it can be very light, and which is really important at Comic-Cons, because we do a lot of walking here, and having heavy armor and having heavy props makes it really rough. We also did, you can buy Nerf guns at Goodwills and other thrift shops for like $1, and those are some of the funnest things to repurpose, because you can just, we've made Borderland guns, we've made all sorts of really fun props with those, and they're fun because it's already got bright colors, and those give you an idea of where you might want to put your accents. You follow the color scheme that they already have. And they have I swear that some game designers just used to play a lot of Nerf and laser tag as kids, because it looks just like the guns. So yeah, I do a lot of repurposing on Nerf guns. And for paint with the Nerf guns, automotive spray paint is your best friend. It gets a really good shine to it. You can get regular spray paint and get a gloss, but it's gonna have a shimmer to it. But if you use automotive, it's gonna hold up a little longer, and it's gonna have a much flatter base with a bright shimmer to it. I know I was judging a cosplay contest a couple of years back at Comic Palooza, and a guy walked in with this helmet that was made out of EVA foam, and I mean it was phenomenal. And what he did though was the paint that he had used was just some basic paint from Walmart, spray paint from Walmart, and unfortunately halfway through his performance, just chips were coming off because they don't soak in. EVA foam does not like to soak in paint. Sorry about that. EVA foam does not like to soak up really well with the paint. You want to put a good base on it before you even go with your spray paint. And always remember to go, if you want a bright color, go with white beforehand. The brighter, the lighter the color is underneath, the brighter the color is going to be when you add in your final color. Even if you have something black, if you have something that's pure black, if you paint it white first and then paint it a color, you're going to get the color that's on the can, versus just trying to spray the automotive paint straight on the black with your fabrics and stuff like that. You really do want to put a base in. It takes a little extra time. You're going to have to let it dry and make sure that it's all secure, but it's going to save you a lot in the long run, because you're not going to have to keep rebuying paint. You're not going to have to keep reapplying the paint. It's just going to set. And Kills is a wall, like basic wall cover up. And that is some of the best paint that I've used to do my base colors. You can buy like, why am I drawing a blank on the name of it? Mod Podge. You can buy some Mod Podge, and that has a decent white to it, but it flakes. So I learned, and it's not oil based. So if you use Kills, which you can get like a gallon of it for like $5 at Walmart, it's oil based, and it's not gonna, if it gets wet or if it gets stuck, yes?
Not all Kills is oil based. They have about 5 different products. Some of them are latex and some of them are oil.
That is true. Always, that's why I say always look at your paint. You want to stay with, you don't want to go with latex. I've made that mistake 1,000 times, and I even tell myself every time that I use it, I'm like, this time it's going to be different. And it never is. Like, I really think it is, but it never changes. Always look for oil base. That's the only thing that's going to soak it into the armor or into the fabrics, especially leather. They like oil. They don't like latex. So, but in general, I do a lot of gender bend and crossplays. So I do a lot of dresses and skirts and corsets and bras. And one thing that you can do if you don't have the makeup skills and you're trying to do it cheaply without having to buy a whole bunch of inserts and a whole bunch of expensive makeup, double up on bras that you get from Walmart, and then add fabric to them. But if you double up the bras, what it does is it gives you a thicker pad to sew into, and that allows the fabric to hold together a little bit better. Bras, they break really easy. If you try to sew anything onto them, they're not made to do that. They're made to look the way they're supposed to look. So I like to double up on them, either that or I do cardboard. I put cardboard on the inside of the bra if I want to put fabric on the outside. And what that does is it gives you a base that your string and your thread is not going to slide through the holes that you're creating. And when you want to do certain things like, so there are some products out there, if you ever want to try to create facial hair and things like that, there are products out there that you can buy that are basically like these template like mats that you can put on, and then they have a special makeup that you apply to it and you peel it off and it becomes hair. But what I've learned to use instead is people that have lots of like petticoats and things like that. If you cut a sliver of your inside petticoat, the mesh part of it, and you apply that to your skin and then paint on top of the mesh, it gives a really good 5 o'clock shadow, as well as it's an automatic clear. You don't have to try to pinpoint where you're going to do it. You just go all over and it's going to look pretty decent. Mesh is your best friend when it comes to adding details. Whether it's adding details to a leather outfit and you want it to have some texture to it. Adding texture, you can either go 3D and use hot glue and things like that can create a 3D look to your outfit, or you can use the mesh, and if you paint over the mesh with a solid amount of paint, you can get it to stick behind. So what I like to do is if I have a Borderlands outfit that is meshed out, and it's a leather jacket with mesh on top of it to give me a good like apocalyptic view on it. And what I did was I ended up super gluing the corners of the mesh into the outfit, and then I painted all the way on top of it, and that stuck onto the fabric. And what that did was it created a 3D look and didn't make it so just streamlined. Because with fabric and with cosplays, you want to try to bring the character to life, and the best way to do that is to have it pop out at you. When it comes to doing little, like when I wear my armors and stuff like that, and we have shoulder gauntlets or anything like that that is metallic, you can buy metallic paint, and automotive paint is really good for that too. It gives that metallic look, but I like using aluminum cans and aluminum period because it's very malleable. And you can heat it up a little and you can shape it exactly how you want it, and it will hold that shape. With aluminum, it doesn't really stick with glue. You kind of need to get a press for it. A little handheld press to do buttons it's really cheap to get, and it saves you a lot of time. And you create rivets because metal needs rivets to stick to things. So, but what I've done for fake rivets, so rivets can get expensive, and some of my EVA foam armor that I have is supposed to look like it's all metallic, and instead of creating rivets all over the entire outfit, not thumbtacks, but they're the little, you get them at the dollar store. It's the things that you put on those big envelopes, the big yellow envelopes that have the little ties on the back that you can put to the side. They're little gold buttons, but you can get those buttons for a pack of 50 of them at a dollar store. And if you put that through your fabric or through your EVA foam or whatever you have, and you just make a small little hole and insert it and then spread the tips, spread the wings, it looks like it's a professional rivet. You can't really tell the difference unless you flip it inside out. Yes?
Are you thinking of Brad's?
Thank you. Yes. Brad's, they're really good for rivets. And you can paint them. That's the cool part of them. But yeah, those, and they don't, the cool thing about those is that if you mess up, when you do a rivet, it basically becomes impossible to take it out. It's really hard to take apart rivets, and it ruins your fabric or ruins your foam, because when you're pressing it together, it creates little pinch marks and things like that, and you'll be able to notice it when you try to take it off. But I use those little brass parts for my rivets instead of actually using it. Plus, there was a long time before I actually had a rivet gun, because those aren't cheap. And so I had to find an alternative for it, and that's one of the best alternatives that I found. They're really easy to paint over, to make them silver instead of gold. So I would definitely suggest trying to go out and basically pick an outfit that's not easy. You know, don't just pick something that's going to be easy because you think you're not going to be good enough to do it. It's trial and error, and the harder the project, the more fulfilling it is at the end. So I always try to go to an extreme, and it's never going to look how I want it to look at the end. It's always going to look a little bit different as the process goes on. But don't be afraid to go big or go home. It's one of those situations that's the great thing about cosplay, is that you can alter something. It doesn't have to be exactly the same thing for someone to recognize you or just for someone to compliment you, because it's all about putting your own unique style to it as it is, because in reality we're not cartoon characters, unfortunately, because then we could just die a whole bunch of times and come back. But what we are people that are in love with it. I mean, I have my some of the easiest outfits that I've had and cheapest ones are things like Goku and Gohan from Dragon Ball Z, strictly because you grab a pair of scrubs and you cut them up into 1,000 pieces and you're done. And that makes it easy. The worst part is the makeup and hair, which takes the longest time to do. But whenever you use fake blood, remember that it is going to stick to whatever you put it on, and it's going to stain it. I have some fake blood on my Goku because it was battle-worn Goku, and when I first started using it, I didn't realize that it would dye the actual costume itself, and the first time I washed it with a whole bunch of fake blood in different areas, it seeped all the way down and created run lines. So if you're going to have something like that, try using paint instead of the blood, because it will hold up better in a wash, whereas fake blood likes to run, and it likes to soak into your fabric and bleed through. So you'll have like a perfect square, and then it has like 3 lines going down, and you can't get rid of it at that point. You have to start over. You can't really paint over it, because you're going to notice, especially because it's cloth most of the time. But fake blood, you can buy it at a whole bunch of different, special effects shops and things like that. But if you don't want to buy fake blood and you want an excess amount of it, if you go and buy a set of food coloring and you buy corn syrup, there we go. If you buy a bottle of corn syrup, just a basic small, like 30 ml liter of corn syrup, and you add in 3 drops of food coloring, you'll get a good blood color. We use it on movies a lot because it has the same consistency. It has a very thick feel to it, but what you want to do is when you add in the food coloring, it's not going to mix properly because corn syrup is really thick, and what you need to do is you actually need to heat it up. You need to heat the corn syrup up in order to add your food coloring if you want it to actually blend into the corn syrup. One of the best things I do is I grab the corn syrup and I'll douse it in some water for like 5 minutes, let it sit there in water, and then open up the top, add in a couple of drops, close it back up and shake it. But the warmer it is, the easier it is to mix. Don't put a whole bunch of food coloring in. You'd be surprised how far a drop goes with that. But I always start with 2 drops, and then I'll shake it up, see what the color looks like. If it's what I like, then I'll leave it. If it's not, I add in another drop. You can always add more, you can never take it away, especially with food coloring. So cornstarch and corn syrup and food coloring is the best fake blood that I've seen out right now. I mean, I've bought tablets that you can put in your mouth and break and have fake blood come out and stuff like that, and none of it has the same. It all tastes really bad, first off, like really bad, but there's never enough out of it. When you get those tablets and those little like containers that they have, you're spending $7 on a little square about that big of fake blood, when you can go buy a thing of corn syrup and food coloring for $3, and you can have enough to last a year. And the cool thing about it is that if you close it and you put it inside of the refrigerator, even with the blood color mixed into it, it will keep in the fridge. So you don't have to just throw it away after your first outfit or after your first day or second day of a con. You can use it at the next con. You just have to make sure that you keep it in a refrigerator, because that will help basically solidify it and make it a little bit better. And then whenever you're ready to use it again, put it in some warm water, let it heat up a little, put a little in your hand and put it on. Food coloring does stain your hands. So that is a thing that I try to wear some gloves whenever you are applying it to yourself, unless you want your hands to look bloody. And you can use latex or regular, just non-latex gloves. I use automotive latex gloves for it, just because it allows me to use my fingers a little bit more. And a really cool technique I learned was, so speaking of latex gloves, if you take a latex glove and you cut it in half to where you only have basically one side of the glove, and you're painting fabric and you're doing like a complete base coat or something, like for my Bond, it's all bright cherry red. But to add texture to it, if you get your latex glove and you pat the paint, a lot of it won't stick to the glove, but what it does is it creates an indent in the paint, and you got to make sure that you go all the way around it and go over each fingers and stuff like that. But what that does is it creates a really good 3D texture to it. It looks more like you've worn it for more than a day than it just came off the shelf, which a lot of the animes and different things, like they always go through battle scenes and they always get messed up, and somehow or another their outfits are still just perfect. I wish that was life, because that would make things really easy. But what I like to do a lot of battle worn, and black paint and bronzer is really good if you want antiquing. And get a foam brush. I have a couple of regular brushes that I'll use sometimes, but foam brushes are basically, I found foam brushes are the easiest ones to use when painting on fabrics. They don't create a run. They are because they're spongy, they create a very solid pattern to it. You're gonna have a solid line here, this line's gonna drape off at the very tip of it, etc., etc. So I like using foam brushes. They're a lot cheaper than regular brushes too, actually. And they come with big squares. You can get them at Walmart or the dollar store, and you can get a pack of like 10 of them for 97 cents. And they are the larger squares. Whenever you're painting, try to remember the less amount of brush strokes that you have to take, the better. Each brush stroke is going to be slightly different. even if you're pretty solid on it and you know what you're doing, each brush stroke is going to be a little bit different with the amount of pressure and the length of the stroke and the amount of paint inside the sponge. So try using a bigger brush to do less strokes. But then that's also when you can go to spray paint and just go to town and have fun and just like spray up the whole room and, you know, clog out the air filter because you'll smoke out. But try to when I paint on fabrics, I do like to use a lot of sponge brushes versus regular brushes. They seem to work a little bit better, and they give if you pat it with a sponge brush, you can get a really good texture out of it without having to use anything else, without having to use mesh or without having to add in glue or anything else. If you just pat it like a sponge, you can get some pretty good texture, but you want a good solid base before you start adding texture to it. So always make sure that you have your base coat done and then you have the color of the outfit done before you start adding in texture. Because if you just have the white base and then you start adding in texture of your red or your blue, it's not going to look the same. You really want to put an entire coat, even if it's going to have a little white showing through or something like that. I have a battle-worn bond that is completely battle-worn to where like parts of it's ripped up and parts of my paint are chipped away and things like that. But that was all done secondary. I started with a main base of the red, and then you can always add in your detail paint later. You don't want to try to you don't want to try to draw circles around where you want white to shine through or where you want certain colors to shine through. You want to create your base first, and then you can add in details after. Because if you try to do it the other way, you'll risk it peeling. Because if it's not all solid, it doesn't like to stick as much. So you want to create a solid platform, and then you can go into adding detail. So yeah, that's some of the basics. Like I said, Goodwill, thrift shops are your best friends. Walmart is too. You can get really cheap scrubs there. And scrubs are actually really useful. They are, because they're as cheap as they are, and they have drawstrings, which allows you to, you know, it makes it to where even if you get a larger pair, they'll fit you, and they're made to be in hospitals and things like that, so they're gonna last. I have a pair. My Gohan it's a teen Gohan, and he's in an all purple outfit, and I use scrubs for that. And I have put enough holes in that there is more holes than there is fabric, and it still holds up. Like I have a single strip that's maybe 1/8 of an inch that covers my shoulder, and that was a pure accident. But I've had it for 4 years, and it's still maintained somehow or another on that tiny little strip. So that's the cool thing about it. They are made to last, and they have as long as you can get a scrub that doesn't have pockets. Pockets are really hard to take off, and once you take them off, you'll see the sewing needle holes all through the lines, and those are really hard to cover up. Even with paint, you generally have to do something like a glue or something inside the holes and then paint on top of it, or else you're just going to have little pinpricks throughout your entire thing. So if you ever do anything where you have to adjust either your pants or a seam on your jacket or something like that, and you're not going on the exact holes that were already sewn, try to use super glue or use in times like that, a little bit of hard Mod Podge works, but you want to cover up your holes before you repaint. Paint will not cover up the holes. It will seep into the sides, and I mean layer after layer after layer eventually will, but then you're just going to have like a 10-layered jacket that is going to be, when you move your arm, it's just going to be like crank, oh, I can't move. I found that using super glue works really well. You just put a little dab over the holes, because I do a lot of adjusting. I do a lot of seam work whenever I buy jackets, for instance, because women's jackets are very slim fitting and, you know, contour to your body, and the only problem with it is as a male, broader shoulders, they don't fit inside the jackets as much, so sometimes we have to add in a couple of panels into the back. And after a while, I figured out that when you take apart that seam in the middle, whether it's in your pants or your jacket, and you're trying to add to it and make it bigger, it's going to, those little pinprick holes from the sewing machine it's going to shine right through, unfortunately. So try to do a base layer of either super glue, hot glue, or something that is over your little holes, and just paint on top of that, and it should work just fine. At least that's what I found, at least. And the hardest thing I have to say when it comes to creating cosplays, even on a budget, is figuring out what you want to do. I know, at least for me, I have 1,001 projects that I'm still working on at the moment that aren't complete. My biggest suggestion, though, is when you find a certain outfit, stick with it until the end, because you will get discouraged halfway through, and you're not going to want to finish it. And once you put it away, it's going to be really hard to get back to it. Not to mention, it's a lot easier to find the stuff that you need for the cosplay if you do it all at once. It may take a day or two. I also suggest, before you start your cosplay, to have everything that you're going to want ready for it. That way you don't have to take a break. You don't have to stop and try to go back to the store to go get something else. Pick a cosplay, sit down and plan it out. I like to write up a list, and I'll say that for the first 3 hours of the day, I'm gonna go out shopping and looking for these items. And if I find these items, I come back, I'm gonna spend 3 hours working on the cosplay, take a break, eat, and then work back on it for another 3 hours. And do that in a pattern until you finish the costume. But I have found that it's a bit easier to find everything all in one setup versus trying to make it, and then I'm gonna try to find something that's gonna somewhat match this and put it together. Which, that's really all cosplay is, especially doing it on a budget. You gotta find things that aren't normally gonna be what they're supposed to be used for, hence why aluminum cans are like my favorite armor pieces, because they give the idea, and they're really easy to come across. Yes?
You mentioned earlier about heating up the aluminum cans to reshape it. How do you heat them up?
Heat guns.
Heat guns?
Yeah. If you don't have a heat gun, what you can do is, before I bought my first heat gun, I had if you get your oven, if you turn your oven on and put a baking sheet in the oven and put the aluminum cans, the aluminum strips, because you don't want to put the whole can in there, you just want to put the strips that you're using. Put the strips on wax paper first and set them in there, and put them inside of the oven at like 200 degrees for 5 minutes maybe. You don't have to put them in there for long. And wear gloves, pull them out and wear gloves, and then you can shape it with your hands at that point, and it won't. Things that I've found out for like creating shoulders and things like that, use a bowl as a template. So find a bowl of the size that you want your shoulder armor or whatever piece of armor that you're using, and then grab it out of the oven, set it on top of the bowl, and slowly press it down while sliding your hands with it. It's not just a push down. You got to kind of you caress it down. But if you do it that way, as long as you heat it up, it won't kink, because aluminum does that. It will kink up really easy. Hence why you can grab an aluminum can and crush it, but the moment you crush it, you can never get it back to the way it looks. But by heating it up, it allows you to press it a little bit better, and it's more malleable. So if you don't have a heat gun, use an oven. You can go as far as also having an open fire, like a little stove or something, and having a pair of tongs and holding it over the fire for just a minute or so until you see it starting to, not to glow, because you don't want it that hot. You just need it to, you just need a little heat. It doesn't require a lot. A hair dryer almost does it, but it's not quite enough heat. You have to stay there for quite a few minutes with a hair dryer. But yeah, so if you don't have a heat gun, an oven is basically a heat gun. And as long as you find the right kind of stuff to put onto your trays, and they're not going to catch fire, you're okay putting it in an oven.
Parchment paper would work really well.
Yes.
Better than
Yes. Yes. It varies on what you have around. And I've even gone as far as I have put a piece of EVA foam in aluminum foil and wrapped it up in aluminum foil by like 3 or 4 wraps, and then put it inside of an oven, because you don't want to melt EVA foam. It's very toxic, and it smells bad and it's not good for you. But wrapping it in the aluminum foil basically creates its own oven inside of itself. So what I did was I had a small strip that I wanted to curve around my hands for some glove armor, and I put it inside of aluminum foil, wrapped it up, put it in the oven for a few minutes, and when I took it out, it was just enough malleable that I could shape it. I don't suggest just tossing it in an oven because you'll get fumes all over the place. The aluminum foil helps keep it from getting too hot, and it keeps it all inside. So also, if you are gonna heat any kind of foam, or if you're gonna try to use a hot knife and cut foam or add details to foam, do it outside, because it's not okay to do it inside, especially if you have animals. Not okay. Yes.
About the heating stuff. While you're at the thrift store, buy an old toaster oven if you're going to do smaller stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because then you can stick it on the porch, and you don't have to worry about fumes.
Yep.
If you melt stuff all over it, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be cooking it. And it costs you $10.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why thrift stores are so awesome. You know.
Invest in tools.
Yeah. Tools are very important. I have a lot of hot knives. I have a lot of, and I've made my own. I've also made my own, and those, they're not hard to do. If you have a decent power source, I mean, you can create them with plugs, but you can also add in batteries if you want them portable. But creating your own hot knife is not as hard as people think it is. It's a simple thread of metal that you make from point A to point B, and you have the conductors on your tips. My very first one I made was out of PVC pipe. I created a handle out of PVC pipe and had a metal string going, a guitar wire. That was before I learned what strings to use. But I had a guitar wire, and I just strung it across the PVC pipe, and inside the pipe I had 2 wires go from the top and 1 from the bottom, and went through the bottom of the base of the PVC and created an outlet, and then plugged it in. At 120 volts, that sucker got hot real quick. So you generally want, if you're going to do something like that, if you're going to make your own equipment, always make sure to try to find regulators, because you don't want to overdo it. And it happens way too often. Before I figured out about the regulator, I burnt through a lot of my stuff. Those you can buy them online. You can also, sometimes if you're lucky, you can go and find, like he said, getting a toaster oven or something like that at a thrift shop. You can find something that's going to have a regulator on it, and then you can disassemble it and apply it to your new outfit or to your new tool. Yes.
The best source of tools I've ever found is friends. Form a group.
Yes.
Figure out what everybody else has.
The cool thing about cosplay is that we're all family. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what your age is, it doesn't matter what your race is, what you look like, we're all family. And we have to stay that way. I mean, honestly, none of my outfits would be finished if I didn't have my friends on my butt saying, dude, you really need to do something, because right now, we're 3 days before the con and you haven't even completed your outfit. That happens all the time, and I'm really bad about it. I'm a very last minute person. But yeah, really, and community. There's a lot of different communities on Facebook for cosplayers and for budget cosplayers to kind of pinpoint. And what you'll find too is a lot of cosplayers, once they've worn an outfit a couple of times, they're not going to want it, they don't care about wearing it again. And you know, I've gotten a lot of my outfits from other friends that are like, I'm done with this, here, you can alter it and make it whatever you want. And don't be afraid of doing that. And it could be something that doesn't look anything like what you want it to look like at first, but with enough practice of shaping and doing things and adding fabrics or adding any foams or things like that, you can change anything. You can make a black cloak look like, you know, something from Star Wars, and then you can turn around and flip it around, and if you add some aluminum foil to that, you can make it look like armor from stormtroopers. I mean, it's just a matter of what you're gonna do with it. Don't be afraid to fail, because you're going to. a whole bunch, a lot. I still fail now, so I mean, it's something that you're always going to be learning. So don't be afraid of that. Yes.
Is there something, I'm a parent,
Mm-hmm.
and is there something you can say to the kids or the younger ones that are wanting to, because they're always their vision of what they want it to be and what you're trying to kind of put some, even if it's just like, okay, I've got this hair, we can do this, and no, and if there's that frustration, is there anything that, because for me, I was just like, trust me, I see it, I know what you're talking about, you show me what you need, and we did it.
Mm-hmm.
And from the beginning to the end, it was just like, oh, and then when I finally, it was done, she was like, oh my God, and I was like, have patience and trust in your parent to try to facilitate it, you know? And it's hard because it was just literally, I had to pull stuff from what I had in the closet. I was like, okay, I need a blue shirt, I need these stretch pants that I actually literally had to sew into a skirt, and I'm like, okay, and then, okay, give me a pair of socks, red marker, you know, for the stripes, and I'm like, okay, we got your high tops, so we can do that, your hair, okay, I've got a fake hair, okay, fake hair, I got fake hair, we can do this, use bobby pins, put it in your hair, and then kind of flat iron it, like almost crunch it, so that it lays down flat, and then I cut it across it, melded it, I mean, because it was like, oh, we're not gonna find that hair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another thing. Wig styling is hard. I mean, I have a stylist in Houston that does all of mine, like, if it wasn't for him, I would not have any. Like, I'm not good at it. I have really bad hair. I don't even do my own hair. The extent of doing my hair is when I go Super Saiyan, I flip upside down and I spray hairspray in my hair, and then I color it, and I'm done. But with kids, something that I've learned with them, give them a job, give them something to do, whether it's, you know, draw what they want, whether it's go online and get reference shots of other things. Keep them occupied. That is one of the biggest things that I like, coming from other parents. You just don't want time with your kids. You need some time alone, even when you're trying to help them. Keep them occupied. What that will do is, especially if you give them something that is job oriented to the costumes or to whatever you're doing, that allows them to feel like they're participating, but they can have their own little thing. And don't give them something very difficult. Like I said, anything as far as a sketch, even a sketch is great. And if they can't draw, tell them to keep drawing until they can learn to draw. Yeah. So, but really, and what that does is, I mean, because I've done, I do a lot of charity work, and we'll go out to hospitals, and we'll go out to all the Ronald McDonald houses and things like that, and we'll spend a day with a whole bunch of Disney princesses and a whole bunch of superheroes, and we'll do activities with the kids. And we have found that some of the easiest things to do is to give them, you know, depending on their age, the younger kids, we'll give them a drawing and be like, here's some crowns, and color what you want it to look like, and then we'll make it happen. And then for the older kids, we go as far as, let's get some sketches done. We're gonna, you know, have them make a small version of what you're doing, like a small template. And I mean small, I mean like doll size small. Give them like a single piece of fabric and be like, okay, you're gonna cut your shirt, you're gonna cut your pants, and you're gonna set it in front of us, and that's what it's gonna look like, except larger. So yeah, keep them occupied. And that's
for next year.
Yeah.
I told her, so we need more. You need to give me more than a day.
Oh yeah.
You know, I came up with what I came up with. I was like, okay, that's quick, but you know, I was looking at other things, and I'm like, okay, next year, this is kind of like a plan, because it's not going to be a one day. If you want it to look like what you see out here, I mean, because this takes work, it takes planning.
It does.
It's not, and don't kind of push it off on me. You're going to have to get in here too, because I want you to, oh, I want to make the guitar, I want to start and do this. I was like, we can do all that. You give me shots. She's already got pictures. This is what I want to do, and this is the hair. I'm like, hair is a big thing.
It is.
For a girl. It's a big thing.
It is. Hair and makeup. I envy, like, I do not envy y'all at all. Like, that's rough.
So yeah, and then it's even one of those, like, well, I want to do something with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this would be fun for me as well. But the thing is, I'm like, you know, we need to plan it so that, okay, we get to that midpoint. Okay, it's go time. We gotta, because we're not doing this one day.
No, I made I made a Moana in one day, and I will not do that again.
We did, for Halloween, we did Penelope Launch Sweets.
Okay.
And I had to like really get creative with that, like down to the candy and crazy glue, and literally the people, kids and adults, were picking the candy out of her hair and eat. I was like, okay, that's crazy glue. Oh, this is great, Twizzlers. I'm like, why are you eating her hair? Why are you eating the candy? Oh, and I was like, and then we had to do it all over again for that night. And I'm like, okay, hopefully they won't eat the candy off your head again.
Let's hope not. That would be bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, try not to eat other people's costumes. That should be a rule. Try not to eat each other's costumes. We do work on it, you know.
But it was great because the reaction from people or classmates or teachers, I was like, this is fun. For me, it was great.
I love getting kids involved. I really do, because there is nothing like it. There's nothing like the community that is here. I'm in Houston right now, and we've been out doing the search and rescues and volunteering and all this other stuff. And I have a few Facebook groups that are all cosplayers, and I made a single post on it on Thursday of last week, saying that we were going to get ready to go do a few things. And within 2.5 hours, it had spread all across Texas, and we had people from Dallas saying that they were coming down, cosplayers specifically, that were going to come down and help us volunteer at the George R. Brown and do things like that. So remember that we are all family, and we're all a community, and don't be afraid to ask for help. If a cosplayer does not want to help you with your outfit, they're really not a good cosplayer. I know, at least for me, when I get my hands dirty and I start working on I'm in another world, and I love that little world. It's like my little fantasy world, and that's my zone. I'd rather be there than in my house every day. Yeah, just remember to ask for help, and don't be afraid to. And just because you're not on level with some of these professional cosplayers and things like that, I'm sorry, I know a lot of them personally, and they're not as great at making their own cosplays as you think. They just buy them. But I think part of cosplay and making it, that's part of the journey. Because you got to think, even the animators and even the people that created these animes and the cartoons, comics that we watch, they created something, and they created that character. They thought about it and they made something out of it. All right, and as a person who is going to try to represent that, I feel like you should do the same. I don't like buying costumes from the store, from the Halloween store, and getting the Sub-Zero from Halloween and work with that. I really do like creating it because it's basically like a thank you to the creators of whatever you're doing. Because it's putting your time and your energy into something. And I've met voice actors to certain characters and things, and they can see the difference of when you work hours and hours on an outfit. You have pride in that outfit, and there's just pride that you don't get from buying it. I mean, don't get me wrong, my Bond that I bought for like $160, it looks really awesome. But the Bond that I created and that I made out of my own leather and that I painted myself and everything, like I'll wear that more often than I'll ever wear my other one. The other one was for a photo shoot, and everything else, if I come to a con, I wear the one I made because I have pride in it. And it does not look like the one that's on that's in 7 Deadly Sins. I don't have the same amount of buttons. I don't have the same size. I mean, it's not exactly the same. But that's my unique style, and that's my unique self. So I put my own little piece into it, and that's something you got to remember to do. Yes, you're trying to be a character. You're trying to be a Star Wars character. Trying to be this anime character. But you also got to remember, at the end of the day, you are who you are, and to add your own little fling into it, whether it's a little button or a little patch, or it's something even on the inside of the armor. I know for some Halo armor that I have the Full Metal Alchemist insignias all on the inside of my Halo armor, just because I was really into it at the time, and no one will see it from the outside. But me personally, when I open it up, I have Al's insignia in it, and I'm like, yes, I have your soul now. If I die, I'm gonna come back in my armor. I'll be okay. So yeah, don't be afraid to add your own unique to it, because that's the great thing about cosplay, is that it is what it is. It's costume play. and have fun with it. If you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. And you just, you know, you can get discouraged. I get plenty discouraged with a lot of my costumes because they never turn out right the first 3 times or 7 times. But do it over and over, and you'll figure it out. It just takes practice. And pink onesie, yes. Did you have something?
I just found an app, Cosplayer, and it allows you to add in your reference materials, add tasks, so you can see how long it is for you to complete your cosplay. It's really awesome.
Those are good tools to use. Do not follow it though. Like do not bank on it being right, because that's the one thing about creating your outfits. Even if you have, I mean, I'll tell myself, okay, I'm gonna spend 2 hours. I have sewn 3 pairs of pants already. I know how to do it. It's only gonna take me 30 minutes to do it. And then 30 minutes later, I'm halfway down with one leg of my pants, and I'm like, I don't know where my time went. So it is good to always plan it. I have a big whiteboard in my cosplay room where I have a list of exactly what order I'm going to do it in, because you want to keep an order. You want to keep a solid line of. That way you don't get distracted and you don't get overwhelmed by all the stuff, because I mean some outfits have 30 or 40 pieces to it, and if you're working on one piece but you know you need another piece, I mean it gets overwhelming sometimes. So my biggest suggestion for that is use it, but don't bank on it being correct, because everyone's going to work a little bit different. Everyone's going to have a little bit different speed when they're doing stuff. Also, you can't account for messing up. I mean, I have a sewing machine, and I've been sewing for years, and I still, like halfway through, like trying to sew a skirt, I'll mess up a hem, and I'll have to turn around and take out the stitch and redo it, which takes time. Not a lot of time, but it does take time. So make sure that you have a list. You want to make sure that you're organized, and sketch it out. Sketch it out first. Before you do any kind of costume, I draw stick figures. I am not an artist at all. I have no drawing skills. I have tried and tried. I've bought lots of books on how to draw people and stuff. I just don't do, I'm not very good at it. But what I do is, I'll even something as far as stick figures with a little skirt on. At least you know that that's gonna be what's in the area. But whenever you do have outfits that have multiple layers or something like that, remember to work your way from inside out. You don't ever want to work outside in, because when you're applying foam to fabric or things like that, or the little details, you want to do that last minute. You want to have your base done, you want your outfit basically completed, and then add in your details. Same thing with doing props. When you're making guns and things like that, you want to create your gun before you start painting your gun. So my biggest thing is always try to have an outline of what you want to do that day, and don't make it too big. Don't make it don't overwhelm yourself at all. Like, give yourself a couple of objectives to complete in that time, and then if you complete them, then you can add more. But don't overwhelm yourself, because the moment you get overwhelmed, at least I know, I'll start pulling my hair out, and I just walk away, and I need a stiff drink, because I'm just like I don't know where to go anymore. I'm stuck. And I work from my bottom up. So like when I make my dresses and things like that, I'll make the entire dress and then I'll add in my details. I've tried doing the whole details and then re-sew your outfit together. I did that for my Bond first. I painted him before I sewed him together. Horrible idea. Do not do that. You want, before you paint things, try to have all your sewing and everything done. The moment you paint it, it's going to clog up your sewing machine. Your needles are going to bend. Paint is just stiffer than the fabric, and it's going to affect how it's going to come out. So remember that if you are sewing anything and painting it, to make sure that you sew it before you paint it, and try to use the same color thread as your fabric. It's a good way to hide your hems, and always remember to do things inside out, because that's how you make it pretty. Yes?
You mentioned dresses. Do you work a lot with petticoats?
Yes.
Because I have this one cosplay friend, and it's like huge. It's a huge petticoat, like Cinderella ball gown almost.
Mm-hmm.
How would you store something like that?
Okay, so storing, I have these tubs that I got from Big Lots, these big plastic tubs, and with your petticoats, you want to put them in a plastic bag, like a big trash bag, and if you get it in a trash bag, you can push them down. Either that, or if you have the fancy little vacuum bags to suck up all the air, because petticoats are nothing but air, basically. There's hardly any fabric, it's just poofy. Those are hard to make. Yeah, if you put it into a plastic bag, like a trash bag, leave the front of it open, and put books or put something, another tub or something heavy on top of it, and flatten it out. And then when you store it, you want to make sure that you put things on top of it. Because it's okay if it flattens itself out. It will poof itself back up. The moment you go, it's done. Like you have a full petticoat. The best way to store it, they do, rats and animals love those things for some reason, and I don't know why. I have found quite a few messed up petticoats inside of my attic because they were in a cardboard box. I suggest putting them in tubs. You want something that's going to be closed, that's going to be sealed. It doesn't have to be airtight, but it needs to be at least closed with a lid. And I suggest putting something else on top of it to allow it to stay flat. Because if you don't, it will poof up. And I mean, it's nothing's wrong with that, but if you're wanting to add more into the tub, put it at the very bottom and work your way up with that. That's how to store petticoats. Besides that, good luck. Do not hang it if you hang it inside your closet, half of your closet's gone. So that's why I started using tubs. So, all right, guys, that's the end of our time. Thank you very much, and this is Cosplay on a Budget. I hope you all have a wonderful day on your last day of San Japan.